A.J. Brown was nowhere to be found in week one. Should you be concerned in your dynasty leagues? We'll tell you next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Michael Fabiano. And on today's show, we're discussing the biggest news and notes coming out of the first game of the NFL season. Plus, we'll do some commotion at the end of the show, players that you need to promote from your bench or your waiver wire into your starting lineups. But Fabs, let's start with the Eagles side because they did win. We like to start with the winners here. But A.J. Brown, 1 target, 1 catch for 8 yards. It didn't come until the final drive of the game. He was a complete afterthought in this offense. Should you be concerned?
No, I wouldn't be concerned. It's 1 week. Devontae Smith didn't do much better. He had 3 catches for 16 yards. The Eagles didn't throw the ball in that game last night. They didn't need to. Jalen Hurts was running all over the Cowboys. Obviously the biggest fantasy contributor of the night with over 24 fantasy points. So it's 1 week. I will say this. There were people on social media who were like, is he hurt? Is he a decoy? What's going on? He played 54 snaps. So it wasn't like there was a decline in terms of him being on the field. They just didn't throw the ball last night. I mean, Dallas Goedert had 7 catches and he only had 44 yards. It was just one of those games that went in the direction of the Eagles didn't have to throw the ball a lot. It was a very close game. It wasn't like they had to run the ball and run the clock or on the flip side, throw the ball a lot to try and erase a deficit. It was a pretty neutral game script and they just did not throw it. And so I know people are freaking out. I have A.J. Brown. I'm not real happy. I hate looking at a Thursday night 1.8 point stink bomb in my lineup. I get it.
Thanks to PPR, at least. Otherwise, you're looking at just 8 yards.
Right. Well, anybody who's playing standard is just, come on, get with the program. But nobody did anything in the Eagles passing game. Again, Goddard had 7 catches and he had 44 yards. That's it. So, no, I'm not worried about it. But is A.J. Brown going to be a consistent stud like CeeDee Lamb and we'll talk about him, or Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase? No, but he didn't get drafted like that either.
No, but at the same time, this is why I think a couple of weeks ago we were talking about players that we want to sell before week one. A.J. Brown was one of those guys, right?
Yep.
And again, you are right. We shouldn't overreact to week one. There are going to be games where the Eagles are just going to have to put up more points. There's also going to be a lot of games coming up where they're not going up against 2 all-pro cornerbacks that the Cowboys have in Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland. There's just going to be more favorable matchups coming.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say one of the things that I noticed is that this offense, the passing scheme without Kellen Moore, looked pretty bland. There just wasn't a lot of motion. Yeah, exactly. Not a lot of motion, not a lot of easy targets to get these guys going. I think that's my concern a little bit. It's just going to be very hit or miss, and it's going to be hard to rely on A.J. Brown every single week to be a wide receiver 1. And unfortunately, Fabs, that's the way that he's being valued in dynasty leagues right now.
And, we talked about one of the reasons why you may want to try and flip him is that, he's not getting any younger. But again, 1 game, I'm not going to put too much stock in it. It was what it was. It wasn't just A.J. Brown. Neither of the wide receivers did anything. I think Jahan Dotson made the biggest impact at wide receiver. Listen, weird things happen in the NFL. It's going to happen every week in almost every single game. So I would not freak out about it just yet. And hopefully A.J. Brown was not a player who you're certainly starting, but you weren't going to be leaning on for elite consistent production every week, because if we learned anything from last season, there are peaks and valleys with him. He's just not that guy at this point.
So we should talk about Jalen Hurts in this game. He continues to be a rushing mastermind. 14 carries for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, you got a QB1 just based on the rushing points there alone. 19 of 23 in the passing game for 152 yards. It's I don't even know what to say about Jalen Hurts anymore. This is just who he is. Like, he's going to give you at least one rushing touchdown every single week. He gives you such a high floor. I mean, again, I think we've been saying this all summer. He felt undervalued in dynasty leagues because the rushing upside is just so high.
And you also have to keep in mind, too, that last year, a massive percentage of his rushing touchdowns were on the tush push. There was not one push in this game that resulted in a touchdown for Jalen Hurts. He avoided pressure and was able to scramble in 2 rushes, obviously score touchdowns. I was thrilled to get Jalen Hurts in some of my redrafts where he had kind of fallen a little bit. Some of those leagues are with sharks and they don't draft quarterbacks until, later on. But I was pretty happy to see that. And this is what Jalen Hurts is. I mean, he's Mr. Consistent. He's going to give you double-digit rushing touchdowns. This is a player who is maybe not going to give you massive numbers through the air, which he did not do last night. But when you're that good as a runner, especially when you're down near the goal line, sometimes those passing yards don't matter as much.
And let's talk about Saquon Barkley really quickly. 18 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown. He also added in 4 receptions for 24 yards. Got a lot of work. Again, week 1, you're already giving him 22 touches. Will say I thought the Cowboys did a better job of stopping the run in the second half. After the weather delay, Saquon Barkley had 7 carries for 1 yard. 1 yard.
Yeah, after the weather delay, everything kind of just seemed to slow down.
Yes.
Because in the first half, the Cowboys defense was Swiss cheese. The Eagles were having their way with Dallas's defense like a hot knife through butter. And in the second half, especially after that rain delay, that lightning delay, the offenses just didn't click as well.
Yeah.
And maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, 60 yards rushing, not great, but 18.4 fantasy points in PPR, you will absolutely take that. And again, it was a game of Philadelphia having success on the ground and not having to throw the ball much. And that's why you saw the stats that you saw, where the 2 dudes who run the ball the most effectively for the Eagles were the big winners. And almost everybody in the passing game, I mean, sans Dallas Goedert, 11 points is fine from him. Everybody else was a loser.
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys side of things, because I actually think there were more takeaways on that side of the ball than what we saw from Philadelphia, because we kind of just know what to expect from this Eagles offense. Yeah, the A.J. Brown part of it sucks, but he's going to be fine. Let's talk about if the Cowboys found their RB1 next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football officially back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. I've been playing Prize Picks over the last couple of years, and it's so much fun. It's probably my favorite way to lock in for the season. It's quick, it's easy, and honestly, it makes football just that much more enjoyable. So download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every single time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond style and safety and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every single detail. Just like an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda does the same. From metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather, you can feel it the moment that you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, the controls, and the standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Let's talk about the Cowboys side of things, Fabs. And I'll just let you go first. What was your biggest takeaway for the Cowboys offense?
I mean, CeeDee Lamb dropping those passes. Like that, I mean, those were killers. And, CeeDee's better than that. That one pass, I mean, Dak dropped in a dime, man, right in his breadbasket, and he dropped it. Now, the last one, that was kind of a hard ball to catch. I mean, he was fully extended, so I don't blame him for that. But he had like 3 drops in the game, and that was bad. He also had 13 targets, and I think that's what you're going to see. 7 catches, 110 yards. It could have been better. But he had a very strong game from a fantasy standpoint, 18 points. So it's kind of what we predicted, in that Dak is going to look to CeeDee often. CeeDee's going to be the best fantasy player on this roster without question. And you kind of are sort of bummed out about the catches he didn't make, especially if you're a Cowboys fan, because that may have put the Cowboys into a position to actually, win the game, which they had a chance to win that game. We can get into that. And also just Dak, this is when real football and fantasy football are very different. In fantasy football, last night, Dak sucked. He had 7.8 points. It was awful. And he only ran the ball once. And I talked about that leading into the preseason. Dak is not a running quarterback anymore. Those 6 touchdowns per season, gone, long gone. He's not going to do that anymore. He doesn't run nearly as much. He only had 188 passing yards. Could have been better. Again, if CeeDee had hauled in a couple of those passes, if Ferguson's able to catch that touchdown where the Eagles had the penalty for spearing, basically, and got the Cowboys down near the goal line. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. I know you want to talk about Javonte Williams, and I get it. This game played out perfectly for him to have a good stat line. It's an outlier. He only rushed for 3.6 yards per carry. He also benefited from a pass interference in the end zone, got him into the end zone. Both of his touchdowns were 1-yard runs. So that's good. We know who the Cowboys' goal line back is. We know who their top back. It's Javonte Williams. Miles Sanders had one good run and then he fumbled because Miles Sanders is not good anymore. He hasn't been good since he left Philadelphia. So it's good. I mean, maybe Javonte Williams is going to bring us back some flex value on a weekly basis, but don't get nuts and all of a sudden think that Miles Sanders is gone and Javonte Williams is going to be a must start every week. I don't think that's going to be the case. Also, Jaden Blue didn't play. That's another thing we should talk about. He was inactive.
Well,
so that's another thing that we got to talk about.
He was inactive, but he was also a healthy scratch, which
that's what I'm saying.
Concerning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So whether it's Sanders or Jaden Blue, at some point I think Blue will make an impact. I don't think Miles Sanders will, but whoever the backup is. But I think listen, I mean, 3.6 yards per carry is not great. But the good news is that, he got the majority of the touches and he played the majority of the snaps. So that's good. So the committee situation, I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see what happens when Blue is actually active. But once again, he got put in a situation that he's not going to get put in every single week. In fact, he won't be put in that situation in most weeks where he is allowed the opportunity to rush from the 1-yard line and score a touchdown. One of those being because of a PI.
On the flip side of this, he had an 80% success rate as a runner, which is unheard of in the NFL. Like, I thought he looked really good. And if we project this Cowboys offense to be one of the highest scoring in the league, maybe he is just going to get a bunch of these 1 or 2 yard rushing touchdowns, and he becomes like a David Montgomery type of player where, again, it's not the flashiest, but man, or Jamal Williams when he was with the Lions back in, was it 2022, I believe? Right. Like I could see that
17 touchdowns that year.
I mean, I could see that playing out. I just thought he looked healthy, and this is the healthiest he's looked in the last couple of years. And I think that's the big takeaway for me here. Also, we should talk about Jaden Blue, a healthy scratch. And it's because the Cowboys don't trust him as a pass blocker and they don't trust him on special teams. And honestly, I don't see that changing in the near future. Maybe we get it, midway through the season, but this is going to be Javonte Williams' backfield. I mean, he led the running backs 15 carries to 4. That's Miles Sanders got 4 touches in this game.
Yep. I get it. And I apologize for cutting you off, but
no, go ahead.
the Eagles also didn't have their best defensive player on the line because he decided he was going to spit on Dak Prescott.
True.
So that's another thing that worked in Javonte. Like literally everything. When Carter got tossed, all of a sudden, okay, well, maybe the Cowboys ground game could get something going. And even though Williams averaged fewer than 4 yards a carry, he got in the end zone a couple of times.
And that's why the yards per carry were low, because he had a bunch of like
everything like fell into place for him to have a really good game. And so next week, if Javonte Williams scores 5.6 points, I'm not going to be shocked. But it is the best part of it is, and I agree with you 100%, Marcus. He's their dude. He's their guy. We love volume, and that could keep him in the flex starter conversation throughout the season.
I just think he looks healthy. And again, you might be right. Like maybe he's only averaging 50 yards from scrimmage moving forward, but I do think we have at least some clarity in this backfield. It's not really a committee. This is Javonte Williams' backfield, and everybody else is rotating in. Could we see it be, games where, again, I think Philadelphia had 3 offensive possessions in the first half, and they score touchdowns on all 3 possessions. Maybe we just see more plays in upcoming games, and that's how Javonte gets more touches. But something to note. We should talk about we should talk about George Pickens.
Yeah.
3 catches for 30 yards on 4 targets. Now he did have 1 pass interference call that set up, one of those Javonte Williams touchdown runs. It wasn't a big game statistically. Are you concerned about Pickens moving forward?
No, because I think this is what he's going to be. Like, he's just going to be up and down. George Pickens was up and down in Pittsburgh when he was like the dude. And now he's got CeeDee Lamb, who is demanding all these targets because he and Dak Prescott have a great rapport together. And so there's going to be games where Pickens goes for 4 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown. And you're like, yes. And then there's going to be games like last night where he has 3 for 30 and 6 points. And you're like, damn it. Like, that's what George Pickens is going to be. Ultimately, at the end of the season, and I said this on the show, if you get 70 catches, 1,000 yards, and 7 touchdowns from George Pickens, that's a win. That's a big win. Again, it's hard for me to really say much about the pass attack in this game for the Cowboys because, well, for either team, to be honest with you, because there just was nothing. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, yes, and it could have been better, but everybody had minimal, awful-looking numbers, including the tight end, Jake Ferguson, who did get 6 targets, which is great. That's great. 5 catches, 23 yards. I didn't look at what the ADOT was from some of these. I mean, it had to be horrible. It had to be horrible. Yeah. But it's hard for me to come out and say, oh, I'm so worried about the Eagles passing game and the Cowboys passing game. I'm not. It's one game. And that's just the game script kind of was what it was. And we should also mention the runners were the ones who dominated this game.
I think the scoring, we had so much scoring. We didn't have a punt in the first 2.5 quarters of this game. And then things just all flipped once we had that rain delay. So again, I don't think you should not be having any big overarching takes coming out of week 1. I honestly, I think the only take that I really have from both sides of the ball is that Javonte Williams is going to be the lead back here. And then from a dynasty perspective, I would not trade for him. If you can trade him away and get something of value, I would do that.
So high,
but that's about it. I mean, I just think he's probably the guy this year. I think he's going to be a low-end RB2, a flex play in a good offense, and we'll see.
I also think that the Cowboys' offense and defense line up the way that we kind of projected, in that the defense is not going to be good, and the offense is going to have to score points in order to stay in games. And in fantasy, that's what we want. As Cowboys fans, it's not. But in fantasy, that's what we want.
All right, let's do some commotion. Players that we are promoting from our bench or maybe even your waiver wire into your starting lineups in week 1. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order. This player delivered when it mattered the most. So let's break it down. It's Jalen Hurts, 60 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, consistently moved the chains for Philadelphia, kept that Cowboys offense off the field. I know it wasn't a great statistical day, but from a fantasy perspective, this is everything you could have wanted from Jalen Hurts. He continues to be an absolute superstar. And just like Jalen Hurts delivered for the Eagles, DoorDash delivers for you on Saturdays. With DoorDash streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, watch some college football, enjoy the day, and keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Term supply, promo period through 11/18. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. It's not too late to binge the 8-episode series of the Locked On Division Preview. Every division winner, breakout star, and Super Bowl contender. Find the link in the description to the Locked On NFL playlist on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Fabs, let's do some commotion, players that we are promoting from our bench into our starting lineups in week one. We're talking about guys not like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, but like some deep guys. Who do you got?
Yeah, this is for bigger leagues. And by the way, no mention of the creamsicle jersey. I'm very disappointed in you, Marcus.
I'm too bummed about my team. That's all right. Go ahead.
I get it. Listen, you and I are together in this. We can have therapy sessions. It's going to be a long season as Cowboys fans. Let's talk about Daniel Jones, a guy who used to play for the Giants and play against the Cowboys a whole bunch. You mentioned him yesterday that you kind of like him this week, and I have him ranked in my top 20. He's not going to be starting in 12-team leagues and maybe not even 14-team leagues in Superflex. I think he's certainly worth a look. Let's not forget, the Dolphins have a lot of questions in their secondary, a lot. And when you factor in that the Colts have, Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, Tyler Warren, obviously Jonathan Taylor, they're at full health. They're definitely an offense that's coming in and is 100%. And the Dolphins secondary, big time question marks. And again, Daniel Jones can run with the ball. Like, let's not forget, he rushed for over 700 yards like 3 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago it was for the Giants. And he was a top 10 quarterback. Not saying that's going to happen in Indianapolis. But when you get into a game at home against a defense that's got massive question marks, and you're looking for that QB2 in a super flex or a second quarterback in a 2 QB league, Daniel Jones, I guess you could do worse. Let's put it that way, okay? I'd much rather play Daniel Jones over, say, a Cam Ward. I had him ranked over Dak Prescott this week.
Yeah.
Okay,
so right.
So it's not a bad play if you need a quarterback, if you don't have an elite player. I love Drake May. He's one of my favorite quarterback sleepers this week. But Daniel Jones is somebody that if you're stretched thin at quarterback, whatever the case may be, you didn't like Dak Prescott's matchup, which we told you not to play him. Daniel Jones is certainly a viable pivot.
Storm Duck, Jason Marshall, Jack Jones. Those are the top 3 cornerbacks for Miami this week going into Indianapolis. I don't love Daniel Jones as a quarterback at all, but he's got weapons. I don't think this pass rush is going to be able to get home very often to Daniel Jones, and he can run a little bit. If you need a QB2 this week for whatever reason and he's available, I think Daniel Jones is going to be just fine.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with Daniel Jones this week for those who need a quarterback and a QB2.
I got Hunter Renfrow as a potential flex option this week. No Jalen Coker, who continues to deal with a quad injury that David Canal said is quite serious. So we'll see how long. You got Ted McMillan on the outside. You've got Xavier Legette, 2 young receivers. And we know that Bryce Young loves to throw to the slot receiver. We've seen Adam Thielen be very, very productive. You go up against Jacksonville. I think this is going to be a really high-scoring game. I just think Hunter Renfrow, like, it won't shock me if he has one of these 6 for 60 games and you get 12 points in a PPR league. And for a flex play in week 1, you can live with that. So I like Hunter Renfrow this week as a deep dynasty stash.
Marcus goes deep when we talk about going deep. A guy who hasn't played football is back.
They didn't go like Darren Waller or something.
Man, isn't it insane that he went from legit being like a weekly fantasy starter,
100 catch season,
to
100 catch season?
I mean, I know that health concerns were a big part of it, but I mean, completely fell off the map. I mean, this guy is still in an age where he could be in the prime of his career. So it'll be interesting to see how the Panthers use him.
All right. Who else do you got?
Jalen Noel. I got like Christmas music in my head because Christian Kirk is out this week and he may be out a few more weeks. He's got a strained hamstring. And Braxton Berrios, by the way, I interviewed Braxton Berrios at the LA Super Bowl, Bengals Rams, and he's not much taller than me. He's just way better looking, and he's dating, obviously, Alex Earl, so I'm very jealous of Braxton Berrios, but he's also banged up. And so Noel could end up seeing work out of the slot, like as a starter. The Texans might have to start 2 rookies in Higgins and Noel this week against the Rams. I don't know how many points they're going to score, but they're going to have to keep up with the Rams offense because the Rams offense has a lot of talent. That also assumes that Matthew Stafford is good to go with the back and there's no issues there, between Puka and Devontae and Kyron. I mean, they're they have a very, very talented offense. They're at home, so they're going to have to score. So, I mean, listen, the Rams were excellent against slot receivers last year. So on paper, it's not a great matchup, but you're just looking for opportunity here. And with the Texans being out 1, potentially 2 wide receivers who played a slot, all of a sudden opportunity knocks for Jalen Noel.
I got one more guy that I want to mention, Calvin Austin for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This Jets-Steeler game is going to be ugly. They should sentence prisoners to have to watch it, but we're going to watch it because this is our job. I just think Calvin Austin, who's fully healthy now, going to be playing in the slot. You've got DK Metcalf. We'll see how much Sauce Gardner is following him. But I think Calvin Austin in the slot, where that's a little bit of a problem area for the Jets, could see a bunch of targets. This Jets pass rush is really, really good. This offensive line for Pittsburgh is very young, two very inexperienced tackles. Aaron Rodgers doesn't like to get hit, so I expect him to get rid of the ball very quickly. And I won't be surprised if Calvin Austin is the one who benefits the most. And he's a guy that can get open quickly, make plays after the catch. I don't think it's going to be a lot of big plays down the field. I think he's going to be a PPR guy where it might be 6 catches for 50 yards and you feel gross about it. But I think Calvin Austin this week has some deep flex appeal.
I said this yesterday. We are all going to be going to school for the next month, and almost on every team. And the Steelers are certainly one of those teams when it comes to their passing game, because after DK Metcalf, we're not sure. Roman Wilson, you mentioned Austin, and Calvin Austin. I remember last year had a couple of good games to the point where I was, thinking about putting him on the waiver wire and maybe grabbing him, and then he ended up getting hurt. So certainly some talent there, and certainly an upgraded quarterback this year for the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. No matter what you think about him, I still think he's better than what they had and what they were going to go into the season with if it was Mason freaking Rudolph. Geez, another Christmas mention. There we go. It'll be here before you know it, folks. I mean, it's already September. So yeah, that's another player too. I think people can keep their eye on for this week.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube, download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We will continue to break down all of the action from week 1 on our next show on Monday, so be on the lookout for that. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy week 1. Football is back, and we will see you right back here on Monday.